Wingmen, what crazy things have you done to get your friend laid? So, my buddy Aiden was dating this girl whose parents were super strict, like no going out past 8 strict. Her dad was one of those overprotective types who probably checked her texts and made her leave her bedroom door open when friends came over. Aiden was totally whipped for this girl, though. He'd talk about her nonstop and was always trying to figure out ways they could hang out without her parents freaking out. The girl was into him too, but was terrified of her dad finding out. She was sneaking around. One Friday night, Aiden calls me panicking. He'd convinced the girl to sneak out, and they were supposed to meet at this park near her house. Everything was going fine until they decided to drive around town for a bit. That's when they spotted her dad's car behind them. Apparently, the dad had gotten suspicious and went looking for her. Now, he was following them through town trying to catch up. Aiden was driving like a maniac trying to lose him. But this guy was determined. I was already out that night, so Aiden calls me screaming into the phone about how screwed he was. The girl was crying in the passenger seat saying her dad was going to kill her and probably ground her until graduation. That's when I came up with the most insane plan ever. I told Aiden to keep driving toward the main road, and I'd meet them there. I raced home and grabbed this neon safety vest from my trunk that I used for my part-time job, doing parking lot maintenance. I also grabbed some orange traffic cones I had left over from work. I drove to where they were headed and set up my little fake checkpoint. Put the cones across half the road, threw on the vest, and turned on my hazard lights. When I saw both cars coming, I started waving them down like I was some kind of official. The dad pulled up first, looking confused as hell. I walked over with this clipboard I found in my car and told him there had been reports of a stolen vehicle in the area, and I needed to check everyone's license as part of a community safety checkpoint. This guy was so flustered and caught off guard that he just handed over his license without even questioning it. While I was pretending to write down his info and making up some story about how long this would take, Aiden and the girl quietly slipped out of their car and started walking the other direction. I kept the dad busy for like 10 more minutes, asking him random questions about where he was going and if he'd seen anything suspicious. Finally, I told him everything looked good and he was free to go. By then, Aiden and the girl were long gone. The dad drove off, still looking confused, but probably figured he'd lost them in traffic or something. Aiden texted me later saying they'd made it to another friend's house where they spent the rest of the night watching movies and eating pizza. The next day, I threw the vest in a dumpster behind a gas station and got rid of the cones. Never heard anything about it again. And the dad never figured out what actually happened that night. Aiden ended up dating that girl for another 6 months before they broke up over something totally unrelated. One time, my buddy Aiden was dating this girl with super strict parents. Like no going out past 8 p.m. kinda strict. Her dad was the overprotective type who probably checked her texts and made her leave her bedroom door open whenever friends came over. Aiden was totally whipped for this girl, talking about her nonstop and always trying to figure out how to hang out without her parents freaking out. The girl liked him too, but was terrified of her dad finding out. One Friday night, Aiden called me in a panic. He'd convinced her to sneak out, and they planned to meet at a park close to her house. Things were going fine until they decided to drive around, and suddenly, they spotted her dad's car tailing them. He'd gotten suspicious and was trying to catch up. Aiden was driving like a maniac, trying to shake him off, but the guy was relentless. The girl was crying, convinced her dad was going to kill her and ground her until graduation. That's when my crazy plan kicked in. I told Aiden to keep heading towards the main road and said I'd meet them there pronto. I raced home, grabbed a neon safety vest from my parking lot maintenance job, threw in some orange traffic cones I had left over, and drove to the spot. I set up a fake police checkpoint, cones blocking half the road, and put on my vest, hazard, lights flashing. When the dad's car pulled up, confused as hell, I walked up with a clipboard I found in my car and explained there'd been reports of a stolen vehicle in the area. I needed to check licenses for a community safety checkpoint. The dad was so caught off guard, he handed me his license without questioning it. I acted like I was taking notes, distracting him with questions about where he was headed and if he'd seen anything suspicious. Meanwhile, Aiden and the girl quietly slipped out and walked away. I kept the dad busy for about 10 minutes before telling him everything checked out, and he was free to go. By then, Aiden and the girl were long gone. The dad drove off, still confused, but probably assumed he'd lost them. Later, Aiden texted me. They'd made it safely to a friend's house and spent the night watching movies and eating pizza. The next day, I tossed the vest in a dumpster behind a gas station and got rid of the cones. Never heard a thing about it again. Aiden and the girl dated another 6 months before breaking up over something totally unrelated. Story. My sister turned my family against me until they cut me off for 12 years. Then my small business took off and I bought a big mansion. The next day, she showed up. "Hey, I'm moving in since you have all this extra room." What I did next shocked her. My name is Daniel. I'm 35, oldest child, default driver, the person people call when the router blinks or the car makes a sound that wasn't there yesterday. I run a small packaging business out of an old warehouse on the east side. Brown boxes, tape machines, labels that don't peel off in the heat. It is boring in the way rent likes. I live with routines. Coffee at 6:10, inbox at 6:30, pallets at 7:00. I save receipts in a shoebox and scan them on Sundays. If something breaks, I fix it or sell it for parts. My family, they used to call me Steady. Then my sister Tessa learned how to make lies sound reasonable. Over time, Steady turned into stubborn, then selfish, then danger. One by one, people stopped picking up. It wasn't dramatic. It was like lights going off in a hallway you still have to walk down. By the end, I had 12 years of quiet. In those 12 years, I built a life outside of group chats. No holidays at mom's, no birthdays with cakes I never wanted, no quick favors that cost a paycheck. I bought used shelving and a label printer off a bankruptcy auction. I learned which truckers would actually show up. I grew a customer list that started with one candle maker and turned into something that required a separate phone line. Last month, the warehouse moved more product in a week than it used to move in a quarter. I signed papers I had never seen before and read them twice. The banker who used to ignore my emails started calling me Sir. It felt fake. It was not fake. When the realtor said she had a place that didn't look like me, but fit my numbers, I laughed and went anyway. The house was ridiculous. It had a fountain you could turn off with an app and a kitchen island the size of my first apartment. A pasty. Owner had installed speakers and ceilings. The backyard had a tree that looked like it had never lost a fight. I stood in the foyer and thought about all the rooms I had never had. Offices, a workshop, a guest room that could be a real guest room, not a couch with a promise. I bought it. I didn't post a photo. I didn't tell anyone except my foreman and my lawyer. I changed the locks. I took a folding chair into the empty living room and ate Chinese takeout out of the carton, sitting on blue painter's tape. The next morning at 9:03 a.m., a white SUV pulled up. 2 women climbed out. My mother in a cardigan she saves for good, and my sister Tessa in sunglasses too big for her face, pulling a suitcase that squeaked. I opened the door half an inch. Tessa smiled like we were friends. "Hey," she said, walking forward as if I had invited her. "I'm moving in since you have. All this extra room. Mom gave me the look she uses for waiters. Don't be rude. Help your sister with her bags." I looked at the suitcase, then at Tessa's face. She waited for me to be the person I used to be. The person who made any feeling in the room his problem. "Congratulations," Tessa added, eyes sliding past me into the house. "We should pick my room before the movers get here." Everything in me wanted to argue. Instead, I stepped back just enough for them to think they'd won and said, "1 second." Then turned, walked down the hall, and picked up a folder from the console table. When I came back, I didn't open the door wider. "This isn't a hotel," I said, "and I'm not your plan." She laughed like I'd said something adorable. "Your family," she said, We make it work. I rested my hand on the folder. I smiled in a way that wasn't one. The part of me that had waited 12 years for a chance to breathe exhaled. Okay, I said. Let's talk about how we're going to make it work. It didn't start with a mansion or a suitcase. It started in a small rental kitchen with a missing 50 and a sentence that stuck. I was 23. Tessa was 20. Mom called me in a panic after my shift. Someone took cash from my purse, she said. Only as 3 were here. She looked at me like she'd already picked the thief. Tessa had tears ready like she'd practiced. It wasn't me, she whispered. You know I'd never. When I said it wasn't me either, Mom made a face like I was being difficult on purpose. 3 days later at Sunday dinner, my aunt leaned across the table and asked, You okay, sweetheart? In a voice that meant she'd heard a version of me. In that version, I had problems with money. In that version, I caused stress. In that version, Tessa had grown up too fast because she had to protect herself. In that version, I didn't get a vote. Over the next year, Tessa got news stories. Daniel refuses to help Mom with groceries. I paid the bill that day. Daniel screamed at me on the porch. I said no when she asked to borrow my car without insurance. Daniel is jealous of what? A life spent making wishes sound like plans. She knew how to load a sentence. Mom amplified it. And I learned that arguing facts in a room that prefers feelings just makes you the villain with evidence. When Dad died quietly in a rehab, a cousin paid for, Tessa told everyone I hadn't visited. I did. He didn't remember I was there. I stayed. An hour. I threw away empty cups and held his hand while he slept. It didn't matter. The version stuck. I was cold. She was loyal. The family picked a hero and a problem. It's easier that way. By year 3, the group chat stopped, including me. I found out about a cousin's wedding from a tag in someone else's photo. Mom changed her phone number because of scammers and didn't give it to me. An uncle told me at a gas station that I was welcome back when you learn to apologize. I didn't ask him to list my crimes. I knew he couldn't. The list would be made of feelings. Work became my calendar. I took a job unloading freight at dawn, then grabbed hours wherever they paid cash. Then took a night shift guarding a parking lot where nothing ever happened, except the feeling that time moves if you make it. I didn't drink. I didn't date. I bought a cheap coffee machine that always burned and a pair of boots that didn't. I learned to like the ache in my legs because it meant I had moved forward. The business wasn't a plan. It was a side effect. A local maker needed custom boxes that wouldn't crush. I figured out a way to fold stock so the corners carried weight. She told another. I bought a second tape gun and a better printer. Someone asked if I could source inserts. I stayed up late watching videos of die cuts and calling suppliers in different time zones. I learned words like flute and burst strength. A candle maker paid me in cash and gratitude the first month. By the third, she paid with a purchase order. The pandemic made everything weird. People wanted boxes. I was a person who understood boxes. While the world argued about masks, I learned to double wrap brittle glass so it didn't arrive like a bag of glitter. While relatives posted chain statuses about real patriots, I bought a pallet jack that didn't stick and hired a cousin's friend because he showed up on time twice. Meanwhile, Tessa's life looked like a carousel. She posted photos with captions like, bossing my way through Monday, then borrowed money on Tuesday. She said she was crushing it in marketing, then asked me to co-sign a car just for a year. I said, no. Mom said, don't be cruel. Tessa posted a screenshot of a motivational quote and blocked me for a month. The cutoff wasn't one day. It was a slope. By year 5, I could have moved to a new city and no one would have noticed. By year 8, I stopped expecting Thanksgiving. By year 10, my phone didn't know their names unless I looked them up on social media, which I stopped doing when it started making my chest tight. Then, year 12 arrived with math that finally liked me. A contract with a regional bakery chain, a warehouse lease that made sense, a lender who said yes at a rate that didn't feel like a dare. I paid off old equipment. I bought a forklift that didn't need a prayer to start. A realtor friend called with a listing I only went to see because I wanted to know how far I'd come. The house was a bad joke. The price was a triangle my numbers could hold. It wasn't about marble or fountains. It was about space, office, storage, a room to put a table where people could eat without boxes for chairs. I closed on a Thursday. On Friday morning, my mother and sister stood on the porch with a suitcase and a tone. Tessa said she was moving in. Mom said I should be grateful for company, because houses are sad when they're empty. I could hear an engine idling. Someone else was waiting to see how this went before coming in with more stuff. The 12-year hallway I'd been walking ended at my own front door. Inside, there were boxes of new hardware for cabinets and a folder on the console table with tabs. I had labeled one guest license. I had labeled another no trespass. I had labeled a third ledger. I had learned to prepare. I wanted a family. I brought a folder. I left the door on the chain. Tessa pretended she didn't notice, which is a thing people do when they want a thing they're not supposed to have. "Let's not make this dramatic," she said, rolling the suitcase closer. The wool squeaked like a mouse. "I'm not," I said. "I'm making it specific." Mom folded her arms. "We know who you are, Daniel. You're difficult with strangers, not with your own people." "I'm the same with everyone now," I said. "It's easier." Tessa glanced at the staircase like she could taste the master suite. "We'll just use the West Wing," she said, as if that was a real thing we had talked about. "You won't even know we're here." "Who's we?" I asked. She hesitated, then said, "Me and a friend. It's temporary. Temporary like the time you asked to use my address. For mail." She smiled without moving her face. That was community. I held up the folder. "This is community," I said, and opened to the first tab. "If you want to be here for 30 days, you sign this guest license. It's month to month. It says you can't change locks, can't bring anyone else without written approval, can't use my name for mail or deliveries, can't record in my home, can't charge anything to my accounts. It also says you pay market rate, rent, a security deposit, and utilities on a submeter. You agree to household rules. If you violate it, you leave." Mom laughed like I told her a magic trick. "You're going to charge your own sister?" "I'm going to write down what we're doing," I said. "That's how we stay siblings." Tessa peered at the paper like it might bite her. "I'm not signing anything," she said. "I'm moving in." I turned to the second tab. "Then this one's for me," I said, sliding the no trespass notice halfway through the gap. "It says you're not allowed on the property. It's already notarized. If you come in, I call the police, and they don't have to ask me if I'm sure." "Daniel," Mom said, warning in her voice. I met her eyes. I didn't blink. "We're not doing the version where you say I'm cruel, and I apologize and you get what you came for." I said, "We did that for a decade. It didn't work." Tessa's mouth thinned. "You're rich now, and you can't even be generous." "I'm not rich." I said, "I just don't owe you everything, because I finally have something." She tried a different angle. "Fine. How about this? Let me stay while I get on my feet. No paperwork. I'll do a chore chart. I'll help decorate." "Who pays?" I asked. She rolled her eyes. You bought a mansion so you wouldn't be alone. You need us." I looked at Mom. "Do you co-sign this?" Mom lifted her chin. "She's family. Family lives together." I closed the folder. "Family also pays debts," I said. I set the third tab on the table in the entryway and slid it toward the crack. It was a simple ledger. Dates, amounts, notes, transfers I had made just till Friday. Bills I had covered because Mom's card is acting weird. A car repair I had paid for because Tessa has an interview. The total at the bottom wasn't the point. The habit was, "This isn't a bill," I said. "It's a record. We've lived without records. It got us here." Tessa pointed at the ledger like it was an accusation. "So now you're an accountant." "Now I write things down," I said. "And I don't sign other people's contracts with my mouth." She took off her sunglasses. Her eyes were the color mine used to be when I still believed I could explain my way into being treated well. "I'm not going to forget this," she said. I'm not going to forget the last 12 years, I said. Mom tried one last time. What would your father think? She asked, which is funny because he's the one who taught me that love without guardrails is just speed. He'd say, lock the truck, I said. Tessa's phone buzzed. Someone texted we good, she typed with angry fingers. You know, she said bright suddenly, it's actually funny. You're up there pretending you earned this by yourself. Who taught you to work? Me and Mom. We made you tough. You owe us. I opened the door fully then and stepped into the gap. She stepped. Back because I am bigger in person than I am in her story. I don't owe you residency as payment for surviving you, I said calm. I don't owe you square footage because I learned to stand up. She looked past me into the foyer. You're really going? To say no? Yes, I said. And because you'll say I left you with nothing, that envelope on the bench has a 30-day stay at an extended stay hotel in your name. Prepaid. There's a list of job resources, a budget template, and 2 therapy consults I already booked. If you want to change, you will. If you don't, you won't. But you're not moving in. Tessa blinked once, twice. Shock isn't loud. It's a blink that doesn't know what to do next. Mom's mouth opened and closed like a kitchen drawer someone keeps slamming. This is revenge, she said, finding a word she likes. No, I said. This isn't about revenge. This is about closure. I took the chain off the door, then not to invite, but to hand the envelope to Tessa and set the folder on the console. I stepped back inside. I closed the door. I locked it. I turned off the foyer. Light. Behind it, I heard Mom whisper, he means it. Then a suitcase will squeak AC'd across the stone. Day 1. After saying no, my phone lit up like a pinball machine. 17 missed calls from Mom, 12 from Tessa, texts from numbers I didn't know saying things like, wow, and cold, and you think you're better. A cousin sent a screenshot of Tessa's post, a black square with white text that said, some people change when they get money. Her comments were full of hearts and facts. I turned my phone face down and went to the warehouse. Work was a relief. Pallets don't ask for rooms. A customer emailed a complaint about a batch of boxes arriving dented. We sent replacements, and I ate the cost because sometimes the price of peace is cardboard. I trained a new guy on the strapping machine and remembered that people who want to learn are easy to like. At lunch, my lawyer May called. You did it, she said. I did it, I said. You okay? I feel like I didn't jump and somehow still landed. I said she laughed. That's called a boundary. She sent me 2 templates. A formal no trespass notice to serve if they came back, and a communication protocol email I could send to family that said in simple words, we will not discuss money or housing by phone or in person. Email only. I will not reply to insults. I will not defend my choices in group chats. The email was 3 lines long. It looked like a napkin note. I sent it anyway. Mom immediately replied, this is ridiculous. We're not a business. I replied, we are people. I'm using words. She wrote back a paragraph about how I'd forgotten where I came from. I didn't answer. 10 minutes later, she wrote, are you not going to answer? I still didn't. Hours later, she sent a photo of the sunset. I hearted it. That evening, Tessa called from the hotel I had paid for. She didn't say thank you. She said the pillows were flat. I said they would fluff. She asked if she could switch to a nicer place if she paid the difference. I said yes. She asked if she could bring her friend. I said the room was in her name. She could decide what felt safe. Then I hung up because I saw where she was steering. Day 3. A rumor reached me at the warehouse. I had thrown my mother out into the street. I drove to Mom's house with groceries because that lie doesn't get oxygen. She opened the door like she'd been practicing a scene. I held up a bag of oranges, bread, and the good peanut butter nobody buys when they're pretending to be humble. I'm not staying, I said. I'm dropping this and leaving. She took the bag and didn't say thank you. You don't have to show off, she said. I'm not. I said, I'm closing a window. What window? The one people scream through when they don't want to talk to me. I said, if you need something, send a list. If I can, I will. If I can't, I won't. No more guessing. She stared at the bag like it could argue for me. We did our best. She said, I believe you. I said, it wasn't good for me. On the way, out, she said. Your sister needs you. She needs a lease. I said, when I got home, there was a car parked across the street I recognized from Tessa's photos. I went inside. I called May. Serve the notice, she said. Do it clean. A process. Server knocked on Tessa's hotel door the next morning. The paper said exactly what I had told her at mine. It wasn't a threat. It was a boundary with a stamp. The next week was messy in small ways. Tessa posted a video where she cried without tears and said, narcissist, like it was a password to sympathy. A cousin commented, praying. Someone messaged me, I always knew you were like this. I deleted the app for a while. May told me, let people think. They're not thinking about you. They're thinking about their own families. At the warehouse, we hit a bottleneck. A supplier shipped the wrong size inserts. I spent a morning with a box cutter and a ruler, trimming 1,000 to fit. It felt good to solve a problem that was actually mine. The air smelled like paper and effort. No one accused me of being cruel. They asked if I had more blades. On day 10, Tessa sent a text. Fine, I'll sign your paper for a month, I replied with a PDF and a time and a keybox code that would open if the signed copy came back first. She wrote, you're insane! I wrote, you're welcome. 30 minutes later, she wrote, forget it. I'm couch surfing. I didn't answer. 2 days later, a different text came. Do you have any warehouse shifts? I stared at the screen. She had never asked me for work. She had asked for rent, cars, food, sympathy, explanations, corrections, silence, not work. I told her we were full, which was true. I sent her a link to a temp agency 2 blocks from her hotel, which I had already paid for 2 weeks in advance because I am sometimes soft in ways I don't advertise. She wrote, whatever. 24 hours later, she sent me a photo of a badge with her name on it and the temp agency's logo. I didn't reply. I saved the photo. The mansion did not turn into a loner's museum. 2 rooms became offices. One became a small gym because my back had started complaining in a language I understood. The biggest room became a long table with mismatched chairs where I feed my team once a week because people who move boxes deserve food that arrives on plates. A spare room became a guest room with clean sheets and a written rule taped inside the nightstand that says, stay as long as a weekend. Leave a key on the counter. Bring nothing to sell me sadness. I invite people who don't use me. My foreman came with his wife and we ate tacos and laughed about a trucker who thinks every ramp is a suggestion. My neighbor Asha came with her kid and we watched a terrible movie on a screen the previous owner left. We paused it every 10 minutes to talk about nothing important. The house sounded like people without demands. It was new. It was not sad. Mom came once. She walked through each room like she was looking for a piece of herself. It's big, she said, as if I hadn't noticed. It is, I said. She sat at the table and didn't ask for anything. I made tea. We didn't talk about Tessa. We talked about my grandfather's blueberry bushes. When she left, she touched the doorframe like a person, saying goodbye to a plane they didn't believe would fly. The 12 years didn't unhap. Old bruises don't vanish because you won, but the shape of the day changed. I stopped writing paragraphs in my head that no one would read. I cooked for myself without pretending it was practice for a family dinner. I set an alarm for 9:14 p.m., the time the bank had called me that one night about a wire someone else tried to send. And when it went off, I smiled and turned it off. It meant I was here. It meant the phone wasn't something that happened to me. It meant I had a button I could push